I've spent the vast majority of my life obsessed with the natural world. It was that which meant that I bored my parents to death over every dining table, talking about owls and lizards and otters and dinosaurs. So moving into talking to a larger number of people through a lens was something that I was able to do. I think, therefore, you need passion and you need real commitment and honesty. The most important piece of equipment that you need is an alarm clock, because you can never be late, and you've got to learn how to integrate into a team. I always think that one of the worst ambitions you can have if you want to be a television presenter is to be a television presenter, because that means it's not about what you want to say, it's about you. And for me, I've never been the star. I'm lucky, I've never needed to be the star. I can't compete with polar bears and tigers and orangutans and humpback whales. I don't do makeup very often. You can spend a couple of hours trying to make me up. You're never going to make me look as good as a tiger, I can tell you that now. There's a lot of misconceptions about television presenters, and I do my best to never live up to them. I carry the tripod. I make the tea. When we're on location, I pick up the battery bag. It's the heaviest one. You've got to signal to everyone that you are there to be part of that team and therefore to maximise its production, not your presentation. And I'm there to reflect everyone else's energy, endeavours and ability. From the runners making the tea, to the researchers coming up with some notes, to the producers and the presenters and the cameramen that have spent hours and hours in the field. You've got to chuck your ego out the window. I have no TV ego at all. I have ego in other aspects of my life where I'm doing things independently, but in TV it's a team job, and the closer and better the team works together, the better TV we can make. I think for a long time our wildlife documentaries have got better and better and better. Technology has largely been in driving that. Endeavour and ability as well. We've all been learning on the job. We were using film when I started work as a presenter. Film was very, very expensive and it was time consuming to use it. So I still largely do things in take one because I feel a great sense of duty not to waste resources or people's time. So training in that way, when you couldn't afford to make that many mistakes before people justifiably got upset, was actually really useful. Some of the equipment we were using, this was in the 80s, we're not talking about the 1920s here, this is the 80s, and now we've got tiny little cameras which are extraordinarily sensitive to light, which we can insert in places non-intrusively without disturbing the wildlife and witness aspects of their lives and behaviour that we could never ever have seen. So in my lifetime, we've seen television revealing so many new things, so many things that I could never have imagined. And this happens on Springwatch. Every year I go there and I see something that I could never witness as a lifelong naturalist, because I can't stand in a bramble bush for 24 hours a day that far from a bird's nest without disturbing them or falling asleep. But our little camera can, and therefore we see those things. So it's been a revelation. As I walked to do my first watch, quite a few years ago now, the producer of that programme said, "Chris, remember one thing. This is a show, not a programme." And it's always contained that entertaining aspect. And I think, again, that helps to engage our audience. And I've always wanted to use it as a platform for building a wider audience. So I've found all sorts of surreptitious means of talking about art and football and music, anything that I can do to prick up the ears of someone on the sofa who's not quite into wildlife as much as their partner or family sat around them. But that might be a means of engaging them. And it endures. We still get really good viewing figures. And at this particular time, when we're facing a climate and environment emergency, this branch of the media really needs to step up, because it is an interface to the world, and the world has a problem. And we need to make sure that we explain the nature of that problem without any ambiguity. We tell the absolute truth to the viewers, but critically as well, we give them the solutions. We give them an opportunity to empower themselves to make a difference. And it's not all about documentaries. Care for the environment should be woven into all programming, not just news, documentaries, but also soaps, dramas. It's part and parcel of all of our lives. So it should be seen in all of our TV lives as well. It's a great opportunity there. I'm very fortunate. I've been given a small voice through my work in television, and therefore I feel an absolute compulsion to use that voice for good. One thing that I hadn't talked about openly was my autism. You know, I'd got myself into a state when I was at university. I would listen to my lecturers, but I wouldn't communicate with any of my peers. My method of dealing with my condition at that time was to entirely block out every other human, because otherwise I was very, very seriously depressed. But when I left university, I was fortunate to initially work as a cameraman, an assistant, and then a cameraman, and then I got a job making a program called The Really Wild Show, which was a children's TV program. Now, I had no problem with the animals, but I did have a problem of having to socialise. I've still got some Really Wild Show scripts, and on the back of them I'd made a list of things that I needed to do that day to make myself usable, acceptable as a team player. Look people in the eye, don't interrupt them when they're talking, which is a trait of mine. I mean, if I figure out what someone's going to say, I don't want to wait for them to finish. It's easier for me to interrupt, but it upsets people. And I made a whole list of these things, which were typical behaviours to me, which would be antagonistic to others. I've made it work, largely. I've made it work. It still comes with some issues and problems, but making the programme, if it's made it any more accessible to young people, will have made some small difference, and that's got to be a good thing.